Hi, I'm Quinn from Autistamatic, and this is 30 Days of Autism Awareness. Do you think you're autistic but you have no diagnosis? Are you so confident in that feeling that you tell people that you actually are autistic? If so, then you're what's known as self-diagnosed, or perhaps more accurately, self-identified. There's a lot of controversy about self-identification within the autistic community. Opinions obviously vary, but I think it's time I went on the record with my own opinion. Self-identification is not a diagnosis, but it's a logical step on the road towards one. Availability of diagnostic services varies, and in some regions it can be very difficult to access. I've heard of waiting lists that are years long, even for children, with that for adults being even longer. There are also many tales of people who very likely would receive a diagnosis if assessed, who've been denied the opportunity because of some doctors' spurious ideas about autistic lives. They've been turned away for making eye contact, for laughing at a joke, or even for caring about others. Personally, I don't think it fair or decent for any one of us who is diagnosed to turn away someone in that position and deprive them of the hope and support that comes from being part of our community. If you are convinced that you're on the spectrum but you have yet to get that piece of paper confirming it, you're welcome in my world. If I can help you make sense of why you feel different to everyone else, I'm happy to be there for you. It gets difficult when people who are not yet diagnosed start offering advice about autistic life though. They may well end up getting that formal diagnosis. But until that point, there is still plausible doubt that they are autistic. Because of that, our enemies can use them as weapons in their war against those of us fighting for the dignity and inclusion that we all deserve. They point to the advocacy of self-diagnosed people to undermine the efforts of us all. They even claim that autism is a fashion statement, which if they know anything of the stigma claiming to be autistic would invite, is utterly ridiculous. At this point in time, the only way to confidently stand up and say, I am autistic, without being caught in the crossfire, is by having a formal diagnosis. It may not always be this way. It was only a few short decades ago that homosexuality was confirmed by psychologists rather than just knowing it yourself. Perhaps I'll live to see a day when the same will apply to autists too. Because I'm autistic, I find that in general I communicate better with other autistic people than with those who are neurotypical. Without any doubt, some of the finest, most honourable people I've met in my life have been other autists. There's been a sense of mutual respect that I rarely find in interactions with NT people. Does this mean that I think autistic people are nicer than NT people? Am I trying to say that autistic people are always lovely to be with? Why is it that I and many other autistic advocates portray an image of autistic life which is, on the whole, very positive? Sadly, much of the discourse about autistic people portrays us as being inherently antisocial. You'll find published articles and scientific papers that will describe us as emotionally unstable, prone to anger, unable to control our impulses, lacking inhibition, socially inappropriate, sexually inappropriate, devoid of empathy, aggressive, slovenly, unimaginative, disrespectful, spiteful, dishonest, selfish, violent, criminal. Faced with a narrative that portrays us all as hopeless social pariahs, is it any wonder that advocates like myself spend a huge proportion of our time challenging such damaging notions? We are forced to consistently promote the good in autistic people, to counter the barrage of implications that we pose a threat to the very fabric of society. There are charlatans, masquerading as scientists, lobbying politicians, worming their way into medical and psychiatric associations, and persistently assaulting the parents of autistic children with scare stories to sell their bogus cures and therapies. They are predators, wearing down their prey into believing there is a problem needing to be solved, and they are the people to solve it. We have to beat them at their own game, so we have no choice but to point out every mistake, every exaggeration, and every lie they use to twist people's hearts and minds. The truth? There are nasty, selfish and uncaring autistic people, just as there are in the neurotypical population. Some people just aren't very nice. Being autistic doesn't make somebody nasty though. Most of the people I know, whether autistic or not, are pretty decent human beings. But there are bad people in this world too. Some of them are autistic. Oi! Don't ask Quinn anything. He'll go right back to the dinosaurs and you'll never get away. An old supervisor of mine used to say that over and again. Comments like that made me think for a very long time that I must be the most boring man on earth. It's another of those aspects of autistic life that felt unique to me until I started to meet other autistic people. We often get told we're boring or tedious. People being disparaging of us to our faces isn't that unusual either. The reason that particular joker criticised me was my need for detail when I explained something. Detail and context are important to me. I'm aware that context changes the meaning of anything, so I try to set the context before I start. Like many autistic people, I rarely take things for granted, so I find it difficult to know which details other people do think need no explanation. I think most of us know that talking about our special interests doesn't always go down well. There can't be many autists who haven't at some time been told to shut up and stop going on about our favourite topic. Not launching into exhaustive lectures about our chosen passions is a lesson we learn early on. But when it comes to explaining something important about our lives, our health, or our jobs, teasing us about our attention to detail is counterproductive. I don't do it because I love the sound of my own voice. I've been misunderstood so many times in the past by people taking things out of context or by misinterpreting my autistic expressions and body language that the only way to overcome it is to express context verbally. I've learned over many years to better understand what I can leave out, but it's still a painstaking process of sifting through information to know what's vital and what's not. It's made communication easier, but it leaves me at a disadvantage because I not only end up with doubts that I've been understood, it gives others free rein to miss out details that I might need. Communication is a two-way process. So it's only right and proper that both sides make equal effort to help it flow and serve its purpose of passing on information, isn't it? So how about it, world? I've spent a lifetime learning how to bore you less. Any chance you could put some effort into having a bit more patience with me? More than once, I have found myself deep in the thrall of clinical depression. It's a state that many autists find ourselves in. On day 10 of this series, I talked about anxiety, which is a constant companion to far too many of us. If left unchecked, depression is the inevitable result of anxiety. It's a word that's bandied about all too readily by people with little understanding of what it is. Someone's a bit cheesed off because something didn't go their way and describes themselves as depressed. What they're actually saying is that they're sad, disappointed, or feeling overlooked. It bears no resemblance to the despair and hopelessness of true clinical depression. As with anxiety, I went through several periods of depression in my life before I was finally diagnosed with it. My autistic disconnect from the broad generalizations and emotional weighting of neurotypical communication had me thinking my experience was normal. I thought that everybody must feel the same. When I finally found out that I was experiencing something that could be treated and prevented, it turned my life around. I'd spent years resigned to my fate. I'd accepted that I was a freak who didn't fit in, that people would never make sense to me. I had no motivation to achieve anything, no belief that I could be any happier. Life was an endless tunnel of drudgery and pain. I would never succeed, I would never be loved, and I would never escape from this hell to lead the charmed life others seem to live. Once I was told that I wasn't experiencing the same as everyone else, once I understood that my mind was suffering from an imbalance of brain chemistry brought on by years of disappointment, disconnection and isolation, things started to change. Simply acknowledging that there was a route back to feeling in control was the first step in taking my life back and moving forward. Whilst I took the medicine I was prescribed, the biggest factor in overcoming depression was knowing what it was and that recovery was possible. Since that time in my early 30s, I've never languished in those depths for long. If I beat it once, I can beat it every time. By learning to manage my anxiety, I've been able to stave off the worst of depression every time I see its dark shadow up ahead. I learned that the first step to beating depression is recognizing it. It's a lesson I wish I'd learned from someone else without having to do it the hard way. I don't like the idea that some people might consider me being autistic as something separate from who I am. It's not an accessory or something I can turn on and off. It's not my sole identity, but it's an important factor in shaping my identity. If I wasn't autistic, I'd be somebody else with different thoughts, feelings and senses. Whilst it's taken many years to understand who I am and my place in this world, I'd rather be me than anyone else. I've been told many times by people who are not autistic themselves that I may not describe myself or anyone else as autistic. Sometimes they've been very aggressive about it. They tell me I should only ever use person first language or PFL, such as person with autism or who has autism.
It puts the person before the autism. You cannot define someone by their disability,
they say. But I find that highly condescending. I said just now that I wouldn't be who I am if I weren't autistic. I am a person first, whether I'm autistic or not. I'm an autistic person. End of. There really isn't much language available to us when we talk about autistic people. We've even had to make some up just for a bit of variety. I use the word autist quite often. Whilst it's pretty clear what it means, it doesn't make grammatical sense. Linguistically, an autist should be someone who oughts, or perhaps makes oughts. I can't hire someone to ought for me, nor can I ask an oughtmonger to sell me some oughts. In countless polls and surveys on the subject, autistic people have come out overwhelmingly against the use of person-first language. Although some don't mind, and a few even prefer it, most find it disrespectful. Anyone who thinks the exclusive use of PFL for autistic people shows respect might want to think again. If you use it occasionally because language around autism is limited, then fair enough. But isn't it more respectful to consider what most autistic people want first? Nobody has the right to tell me or any other autistic person how we should choose to be referred to or how we describe ourselves. Autism is not with me nor affecting me, and I'm certainly not suffering from or afflicted by it. I'm autistic, and I'm fine with that. Being autistic is a lifelong journey of realising that other people don't see things the way we do. It can sometimes take a long time for us to realise that what may be a primal motivation for us might not seem to matter to most others. One of these for me is leaving things unfinished. I don't like it one bit. I've always had a powerful drive to see things through to the end. If I set out to achieve something, I find it very difficult to walk away before its conclusion. Take this series. I called it 30 Days of Autism Awareness, started it on 2nd of April, and was intended to finish on 1st of May. The point being that promoting awareness and acceptance of autism goes beyond the month of April. I had to take a couple of days off for personal reasons, so it put me behind. Tomorrow will be May the 1st, the day the series was due to end, but thanks to the interruption, that'll be day 28. I have to carry on the extra 2 days to reach 30. To quote Magnus Magnusson, the longtime host of TV's Mastermind, I've started, so I'll finish. Because this is a personal project, I have the freedom to do that. But when I've been faced with similar situations in work, back in school, or even family life, I've encountered resistance when I've tried to see things through. Stop worrying about it! People will understand, they say. They'll tell me that my need to complete what I started is silly, obsessional, unhealthy. All sorts of reasons will be put forward to justify downing tools and leaving something incomplete. They'll say I've done enough, I deserve a rest, that what I've done is good enough even if it's half finished. I know those people often think they're being kind, but however hard I try to explain, they never seem to understand how stressful doing that is to me. There is a sense of relief and satisfaction in completion. Every project is like a story with a beginning, middle and end. I can't leave that last chapter untold without a sense of profound anxiety. Since anxiety has always been a feature of my life, I need to keep news sources to a minimum. No amount of kind words can overcome that. The kindest thing anyone can do for me is to let me, or even better support me, to finish. There's all sorts of unspoken conventions within neurotypical communication, and even at nearly 50 years of age, I still feel like I've got a great deal to learn about their ways. I don't like using words like "there" in such sentences though. The most baffling thing for me about being autistic is that the differences between myself and the majority of the people inhabiting my world are so subtle, yet have such a huge impact on my life. I am as human as everyone I meet, yet I've been made to feel far less than human too many times. There's a common belief that autistics are rigid and set in our ways. Whilst there's truth in it when it comes to routines and habits, I found that it's quite the opposite when it comes to attitudes and ideas. In terms of communication and accommodating the needs of the neurotypical people I meet in everyday life, I don't think many people could claim to be more flexible. The process we autists call masking isn't just a facade. It's a complicated process of adaptation and re-evaluation of not only how we act, but how we interpret other people. We learn new tricks every day. So much communication is not the straight, honest truth we want it to be. There are so many layers of assumption, shared knowledge, cultural references and non-literal language that deciphering even the most mundane of verbal exchanges becomes a complex puzzle to rival the most intricate of mathematical conundrums. Yet, despite updating our internal operating systems at a pace that would make even Microsoft shy away in fear, we're still seen as inflexible. To autistic eyes, it seems more that the people we're adapting to are those with the problem in accepting change, whilst autists spend our lives in a perpetual perpetual state of flux, fine-tuning our interactions to meet others' expectations, the majority of neurotypical people don't see any need to adapt to meet us in the middle. If there's one message I want the non-autistic world to take from my work, it's that I really wish you could see the beauty I see. There is potential for the many different thought styles and sensory experiences of those who don't fit the factory mould we call neurotypical to work in harmony with everyone and make our future a richer, happier place to live in. That's only going to happen if those who think they know what normal means learn that it actually means very little at all. Being autistic doesn't mean I don't need connection with other people. Quite the opposite. I need to have someone to bounce off, to reassure me, to comfort me when I'm down and share my triumphs as much as anyone else. Autists are often seen as loners, but if we are, it's rarely by choice. Some of us desperately want to form bonds with others, but find it next to impossible, thanks to the widespread fear of the unknown, which makes others keep us at a distance. Being the friend or the partner of an autist surprises a lot of people. We're made out to be self-absorbed, insensitive and uncaring. They say we're inflexible, single-minded, selfish and impossible to please. These unhelpful and untrue beliefs have even led to the formation of hate groups against autistics made up of people in bad relationships who have assumed their partners are autistic based on these fallacies. I don't want a wide group of peripheral friends. I don't have the social or emotional energy to handle it. What I do want is what I have. A small group of people in my life who I know very well and I'm extremely close to. My social circle is narrow and concentrated. I've devoted most of my social and emotional resources into one person, my wife. I know her better than I've known anyone ever. I'm unfailingly loyal and I could never knowingly do anything to hurt her feelings. I've invested huge intellectual effort into understanding her thought processes, her likes and dislikes, and her physical and emotional needs. I'm not able to make assumptions about people's thoughts and intent, but I am able to devote my attention to one person to form a close, intuitive, and solid bond. The few friends and family I have in my life, I've similarly invested far more effort than you'd expect into understanding them as individuals. I know I can rely on them and they me. We're there for each other whenever we're needed, even if we sometimes don't see one another for months or years. Autistic people can be very resilient when forced to be alone, and most of us value our time to follow our interests and to reflect on our daily lives, but we still need friends and we still need to be loved. We're more than capable of giving that love and trust back too, and you may be surprised how good we can be at it. So this is the end of 30 Days of Autism Awareness. I knew it would be a massive undertaking, but having faced some unexpected challenges along the way and dealt with emotional demands that would be daunting at the best of times, it's been quite a ride. Why did I choose to do this? I've been making short films about autistic life on YouTube since 2018. My goal was to set the record straight on the many stereotypes about autistic people that stop us leading the lives we deserve. Being autistic doesn't need to be difficult. Whilst there is still a perception that we are self-centred, antisocial, emotionally stunted and unreliable, we will never be able to lead lives on an equal footing. I've talked of the anxiety of living with intolerance, the confusion of living in a world based on assumptions I can't share, how I communicate, my feelings, my interests and my loves. I may not be as predictable as some people would like, but I'm still a decent, caring human being with a genuine desire to connect and play my part in society. In that respect, I'm no different to any other autistic. Give us a chance and we will shine. A combination of bitter struggle and a splash of good luck has allowed me to get to a place where I can feel reasonably safe. I have people around me I can trust who are willing to see past my differences, to appreciate the real me. If it weren't for that, I would still be struggling so hard just to survive, I wouldn't be able to make videos or write articles. I've received some wonderful feedback from this series, from other autists who've thanked me for putting their feelings into words, and from neurotypical people who've gained insight into their autistic partners, friends and family members. It's both life-affirming and humbling to know that I've brought a little bit of light into other people's lives. Well, this series ends here. The journey continues on the Autistamatic YouTube channel, on Autistamatic.com, and anywhere else I write or speak. My message will always be the same. Autistic people are as valuable in society as anyone else. All we need is for people to let go of decades worth of misguided ideas about us, to open their hearts and minds to new possibilities, and to let us in to your lives. I'm autistic. I always have been, and I always will be. I'm Quinn from Autistamatic, and I thank you for spending some time with me.